Mayor Bloomberg, let me talk about the tax cut debate, which is gripping Washington right now and will for some time. E.J. Dionne writes this in his column this week in the Washington Post. Political stupidity U.S. style is the headline. Can a nation remain a superpower if its internal politics are incorrigibly stupid? Start with taxes, he writes. In every other serious democracy, conservative political parties feel at least some obligation to match their tax policies with their spending plans. David Cameron, the new conservative prime minister in Britain, is a leading example. He recently offered a rather brutal budget that includes severe cutbacks. I have doubts about some of them, but at least Cameron cared enough about reducing his country's deficit that alongside the cuts, he also proposed an increase in the value-added tax from 17.5% to 20%. Imagine a fiscal conservative who really is a fiscal conservative. That could never happen here because the fairy tale of supply-side economic insists that taxes are always too high, especially on the rich. And yet the administration says economic growth won't be affected if you let the tax cuts expire for the wealthiest Americans.
I don't think you want to run the risk that they are wrong. I would say let's go on with the tax cuts for another couple of years, but you couple it with long-term solutions. And you have to look at what's politically possible.
Governor Rendell, that is not the position of the administration or Democrats who want to make this a big midterm election issue.
And interestingly, I certainly agree with what the mayor said. What we've got to do is, I think Simpson Bowles is very important. I think both parties have to
That's the Debt Commission suggestions on how to cut spending.
Both parties have to get together and say, we're going to do this together, we're going to make the changes. They're not going to be popular, but they're necessary. But you have to have increased taxes along with those reductions. And this fairy tale that increased taxes on the rich is going to hurt the economy, well, we don't have to look any further than 1993. What Bill Clinton did without one Republican vote was essentially the same thing. He raised taxes on the top 2% in America. That was combined with budget cuts that the President and the Republican Congress did together, and it produced 23.5 million new jobs in the 7 years that followed.
Okay, but keep in mind you had that virtuous cycle going. We did not have a war, and a lot of things went perfectly.
There's no question, but there's also no question that that's irrefutable. If it was going to hurt small business, you would have seen not anywhere close to 23.5 million jobs created. What I think we ought to do, sit down after the election, because it's our only chance to do this. Everyone takes responsibility for cutting the entitlement programs, which, as the mayor said, are absolutely necessary. We maybe phase in the elimination of the tax cut for the rich over 2 or 3 years. I'd accept that. But taxes, as you said, and Prime Minister Cameron did, you have to do both. You have to cut spending, and we ought to be doing that. You have to continue the short-term stimulus, as David Walker said, and you've got to raise some revenue.
All right, well, Dr. Greenspan, it's not often that you hear Democrats and liberals quoting you, but in this case they did when it came to tax cuts because of an interview you gave recently with Judy Woodruff on Bloomberg Television. Here was the question: tax cuts that are due to expire at the end of this year, should they be extended? What should Congress do? You said, I should say, they should follow the law and then let them lapse. Question. So to those interests who say, but wait a minute, if you let these taxes go, my taxes go up, it's going to depress growth. You said, yes, it probably will, but I think we have no choice in doing that because we have to recognize there are no solutions which are optimum. These are choices between bad and worse. You're saying let them all go. Let them all lapse.
Look, I'm very much in favor of tax cuts, but not with borrowed money. And the problem that we've gotten into in recent years is spending programs with borrowed money, tax cuts with borrowed money, and at the end of the day, that proves disastrous. And my view is I don't think we can play subtle policy here.
You don't agree with Republican leaders who say tax cuts pay for themselves?
They do not.